What's up, everybody? We're back again with a new edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And you know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. You know who we are. Cam Smith, rocking with my man Drew Stevens of the Bigs. And Drew, it's a very somber reaction pod that we're dropping right now as we are still situated inside of the United Center on the west side of Chicago because the Bulls season has come to an end at the hands of the Miami Heat once again. That's 3 straight years that the Miami Heat have ended the Bulls season in the play-in. And so the difference of this year was the previous 2 years we saw the Bulls face off against the Miami Heat. And the second game to get that 8th overall seed in the Eastern Conference in South Beach. This one was to keep the hopes alive and try to have another chance at winning a game to get the 8th spot. But it bows out early for this Bulls team as they lost 109-90. This game was a microcosm of what we've seen from this Bulls team throughout this season, and more so before the trade deadline, because this Bulls team has played some really great basketball, and I don't use that word lightly, great, when talking about how the Bulls have played since the trade deadline. Obviously, individually, guys stepped up and really maximized their talents with Josh Giddey, Kobe White. We've seen 𝗵𝗨 grow, but this was tonight a rewinding of a team that we saw in the early parts of the season where there was careless turnovers, there was lack of ball movement, shots were not being made, and more importantly, defensively, they were giving up straight-line drives, and something that Billy Donovan has laid out time and time again with this Bulls team in terms of things that they cannot allow in order to put themselves into a position of winning a ball game. So, Drew, let's start it from here. You put yourself in a tough spot when you give up 39 points in the opening quarter of a basketball game, especially to the road team. You put yourself in an even tougher spot when you're at halftime and that opponent has put up 71 points. And you have to credit the Miami Heat, Erik Spoelstra, what they were able to do, especially Tyler Herro, who was balling. I mean, this dude was on one from the jump, led all scores when you look at what he was able to do throughout the ball game with 38 points. There was a point, Drew, where Tyler Herro was perfect from the field in that first half. My man was hooping. So where do you want to take this? Because there are a number of different lanes that we can take this thing. But let's start it here when it comes to just what we saw and just trying to unpack it from there.
So I think I want to take it in the direction of what this game could potentially mean for this team moving forward. I don't know how much is going to change with this roster over the course of the offseason. I don't expect any splashes in free agency. I don't think they're going to be able to make any big splashes in free agency. They obviously, now that they have bowed out of the season, will pick in the lottery. There's some moves maybe they can make in terms of trades, but I get the sense that this team is going to return in much the way that we saw it this season. So, what does tonight mean for the Bulls wanting to play at a high up-tempo style of play and their ability to play in a half court when they are going against a team like the Miami Heat or a different team when the stakes are higher? What can they do to make sure that they can execute at a higher clip when they get in these moments again? There's questions that this front office is going to have to ask themselves about Josh Giddey. I think both of us are of the belief that he will be back, but I don't think tonight helped his cause in terms of his ability to defend in space, to not kind of be the scab that opposing teams continue to pick at time and time again. Right from the jump tonight, we saw Tyler Herro just kind of walk to the rim, not just against Josh Giddey. There were other guys that he was doing it to. Obviously, he was on his way to a 38-point game. You spoke to him starting the game. I believe it was 8 for 8 from the field. But the defense just was not there tonight. Billy Donovan spoke to it, the fact that they could not control the ball. And then you couple that with the fact that Miami just completely took them out of their style of play, finishing with just 13 fast break points on the night. They were able to kind of kick up their free throw attempts in that second half, but it just was not a good showing tonight. You hate to kind of lean into how difficult it is to beat a team 4 times in one season.
Right.
But this being the 4th time that these two teams have faced each other, the 3rd time, I believe, since the trade deadline. But Miami they kicked it into a different gear. They were able to control the game. And unfortunately for the Bulls, their season ends on a very sour night. Ironically, at home in the stadium that 𝗵𝗂 𝗠𝗶𝗃 hopes to, be able to muster a home court advantage for this team. But they took it on the chin tonight. And I think that as well as they played down the stretch of the season, going 17-13 in the last 30 games, again, tonight leaves some questions to be answered for this front office and players alike.
Yeah, we'll see how those questions will be answered now that the offseason is officially here for this Bulls team, and players will be made available tomorrow, their media day, along with 𝗵𝗂 𝗠𝗶𝗃 tomorrow as well. So there will be a lot of questions in terms of how this team will look roster-wise as we get to the offseason, which is here now, what moves can be made, and you get into the draft process of players that the Bulls are targeting to see how that will fit within the makeup of this team. So we're at that point. But getting it back to tonight and what we saw, we got to give the Miami Heat a lot of credit for what they were able to do against this Bulls team, because it's one thing to get swept by an opponent for the regular season and losing 3 times. But what we know of the Miami Heat, and especially 𝗵𝗄 𝗠𝗶𝗃, is that, one, he's an NBA champion head coach. He has a player in Andrew Wiggins on his team that has an NBA championship. He has players, plural, on his team with NBA Finals experience in 𝗵 𝗵𝗂 and Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson. Right, the list goes on and on. 𝗵 Jaquez, who saw very limited time tonight. But this team understands what it takes. And those players that I mentioned that have the NBA Finals experience for this Miami Heat team that was there against the Denver Nuggets a couple of seasons ago, remember how they got there. It was off the play-in. And the team that they beat to get themselves into the playoffs were the Chicago Bulls. So going into tonight's matchup, you knew that 𝗵𝗄 𝗠𝗶𝗃 was pouring into film, especially with the extra days off that the Miami Heat had, trying to find some type of way to right their own wrongs and trying to prevent the Bulls to be the team that we've seen in the second half of the season, more so since the trade deadline, really get out in transition, attack guys, get points in the paint, and really play an exciting brand of basketball. And we were listening to Billy Donovan post-game tonight, and he was saying that this was just not the team that we've seen previously in terms of, speaking of his own team, the Chicago Bulls, that was successful, especially when it came to transition points. Drew, the Bulls only have 4 transition points, fast break points in the first half, and they finished with a total of 13. So one, that tells me that Miami was very intentional of making sure, make or miss, that basketball was stopped early, but then also, 2, when they got into a position of control of the basketball, that the rotations were set. So there were not a lot of straight line drives for this Bulls team, which we saw them have so much success, especially recently when you think about the month of April, and of course going back to March, where that exciting brand of basketball was there. Josh Giddey was not able to get downhill at the rate and at the level that we've seen him play at. Same thing with Coby White. His shot was not there tonight once again. This is back-to-back games we've seen for Coby White against this Miami Heat defense, where they just made him look average. And Coby has been special really all season long, but especially in the second part of the season since the trade deadline, where he's elevated his play, and you start to see that all-star potential with Coby White. But 𝗵𝗄 𝗠𝗶𝗃, one of the masterminds of the NBA, one of the best head coaches that we have in the modern game today, made sure that he made the Bulls really work for everything and expose a lot for this Bulls team. And this was again, as I mentioned, a rewind of the team that we saw earlier in the season that was reckless with the basketball. We saw that with the 17 turnovers, and was also not able to get their offense with any type of rhythm. And that showed tonight with the only 15 assists that they had. So it's a lot that you have to really digest with what we saw tonight. And I think the toughest part is that it happened in this building in front of your home fans and to have that type of performance. And I think this performance tonight is not indicative of what we've seen recently with this team, because let's just be real about it. We've seen exciting basketball from this group, no doubt. Like, that narrative changed on the name of this Bulls team and the individual stories that we saw with Josh Giddey, with 𝗏𝗏 𝗟𝗏, of course, Coby White, as I just mentioned. It led fans to have this belief and this trust that this team could really get over the hump against the Miami Heat, get themselves in a position on Friday night to face off against the loser of the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks, and it was the Atlanta Hawks, to try and have a shot, at playing against the Cleveland Cavaliers in that 1-versus-8 matchup. But you have the reality hit of tonight and Miami coming into this building and really taking it over, and it was from start to finish. Very eerily similar to what we saw in South Beach last year between the Bulls and the Heat. And the common theme was no Jimmy Butler. Didn't see Jimmy Butler last year, and we saw 𝗵 𝗏𝗶𝗹, Tyler Herro, and the other guys from Miami step up. It's the same thing this year for the Miami Heat, with Tyler Herro, 𝗵 𝗏𝗶𝗹, Duncan Robinson, just making shots, making plays. And here's one thing that stands out to me, Drew. When you combine Tyler Herro's 38, Andrew Wiggins' 20 points, and Davion Mitchell's 15 points, and this is not to say that Davion Mitchell is not a bad player. He's in the NBA for a reason. But when you allow Davion Mitchell to put up 15 points on the road, that's a problem. And so when you have all three of those guys combined for 73 points, you have yourself in a position where it's tough for you. It's really, really tough. And I went into this ballgame, Drew, with the belief that the Bulls had the better guard group. But that wasn't the case tonight.
It wasn't. And I think the Miami Heat just really stifled the Bulls essentially from start to finish. You and I spoke before the game about, what would need to happen for each team to win, and Miami took it to the Bulls early and often. Coby White spoke to the physicality of tonight's game. The Bulls just couldn't really get in sync, and you have to credit the Miami Heat defense for that. Even Kevin Herter, I think he scored 4 points in the first half, scored a quick 6 to open up the third quarter, but he ended up finishing with 10 points. So, the guys on a team who you got accustomed to getting points from just wasn't quite there. Again, Josh Giddey finished with 25, but some of the things that people had questions about with his game, the defense, the ability to knock down open shots, how would he do against teams who gave him space and kind of packed the paint, and those questions still remain. Again, you don't want to put too much into one game, but there's things about what happened tonight that you just can't ignore. With this being, the most important game of the season, it didn't end on a great note whatsoever. Coby White finished with 7 turnovers, which would have been a season high, but of course, playing stats don't count, so we're gonna wipe those away and forget about them after.
Look, we were talking about this during the game. Like, the NBA is wrong for not allowing playoff stats, or play-in stats, to hold true to a player's career stats and just numbers. And I'm not saying that just so the NBA can have Kobe's 7 turnovers a part of his stats for his career, but going back to last year with him dropping 42 against the Atlanta Hawks, it's like, come on, man, how can you forget about that? But then also, this is the play-in, so you're counting the win for a team to advance, but not the stats. So we can make a whole pod about that conversation, Drew, no doubt.
Yeah, no, we really can. If I can just hop up on that soapbox with you, man. The play-in tournament it doesn't quite do it for me, just in general, man. Because you got teams in the Eastern Conference who have below 500 records, trying to duke it out so they can be food for the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference. Then on the West end of the bracket, you got teams who are scratching and clawing all season long to finish in 7th and 8th, and then you force them to have to play do or die games again just to get into the playoffs. It's a flawed system just in and of itself. But I'll hop down now from that perch.
No, you good. You good. Hop down, because I'm about to hop back on to the soapbox with this thing, because there's a reason why you make the playoffs, because you earn your spot. And I know it is walking through hell with gasoline draws on in the Western Conference of trying to make the playoffs. I get it. But when you work and put yourself in a position to get a spot in that top 8, you earn that. And I think you should be rewarded with that, as opposed to having a team 7 through 10 be in a position to essentially have a participation trophy when it comes to the playoffs. And that's the culture of not just the NBA, but just sports in general. I think there's a bigger conversation with NCAA, with the NBA play-in, a lot of things around sports where there is we want everybody to participate. We want everyone to have a chance. No, you have to earn your spot in that top 8. And since we're talking about the NBA play-in and the NBA playoffs, bring back every game meaning everything, because you have some teams that try to sneak in on the back end to make the play-in, hope to have a run so they can find themselves in that 7th or 8th spot. So, Drew, let me hop down off the soapbox and we can move the conversation forward, because we don't want to turn this into a gripe against the NBA play-in, but it's legitimate. I think a lot of people will agree with us on that. Were you surprised with what we saw from Tyler Herro and what he was able to do? Because we were walking past the Heat locker room and saw Herro getting ready to walk out, and my man was dressed like he just dropped 38 points. Like, had like the old school shorts on with the baggy jacket and all that. Like he looked like an all-star that just walked into an opposing team's building and dropped 38.
Yeah, he made it look easy for sure. I was not surprised. I mean, he got his first All-Star nod this season. He's taking on different responsibilities for the Heat, kind of like the guy that they lean on to provide that scoring punch. And the Bulls don't have, any more lockdown defenders on their team. They're obviously missing Ayo Dosunmu. They're missing Lonzo Ball. So there's only so many ways they could try to attack Tyler Herro. They did try to blitz him in the second half. Billy Donovan mentioned them even trying to throw a box and one at him to try to slow him down and kind of throw a wrench in what he was doing tonight. But no, I wasn't surprised. It was like he had the Kobe White playing game from a season ago, man. He caught fire, and the Bulls could not cool him off no matter what they did tonight.
And we saw with defenders locking and trailing on Herro with a lot of down screens or stagger screens, and he did a hell of a job. And this is part of his growth as a player in the NBA, but then also just his skill set and time that he's put into his craft, but did a phenomenal job of on the catch, of curling certain screens and making sure that he essentially put his body in between the defender that was locking and trailing behind him and the rim. And so now he made basically a one-on-one game with either Nikola Vucevic or a big or a player out of position for the Bulls. So you saw him, a lot of floaters in the lane, getting to the rim, especially in that first quarter. We saw that early on, but then also just a couple of step backs as well. So when you mix and match your game like Herro was able to do tonight, I mean, really the sky's the limit. It doesn't matter who's defending and who's playing against you, because it was from start to finish with Tyler Herro. And we've seen him really step into that star role for the Miami Heat and thrive. I think another dude that had a lackluster game last week against the Bulls was Bam Adebayo, and what he wasn't able to do. But tonight was a different story with Bam when he put up 20 points. He put up 15 points and 12 rebounds. So Bam, and I talked to Casey with this on the previous pod, he didn't do a lot of the flip shots and floaters in the lane. It was more so just physical brute. This is my nickname, Bam, so I'm going to live up to my nickname and just be physical with dudes inside the post.
Yeah, Bam didn't quite look like the Bam that I kind of have in my mind. I don't know how to explain that.
So he looked more like Idris instead of Bam?
Something like that. Like he wasn't necessarily a problem for the Bulls offensively. I'm not sure what it is about his game, but it's just, I don't know if it's the Jimmy Butler factor of him, having to step up and assume some of those scoring responsibilities and not
Yeah.
quite filling those out. But offensively, I still thought he lacked a certain punch tonight. But you know, to your point, he still got him 15 points, still finished with a double-double. Defensively, he was able to wreak some havoc. I believe he started the game off on Josh Giddey, and Andrew Wiggins took Kobe. So, you know, that's really where his bread is buttered, is on the defensive side of the ball and what he allows Erik Spoelstra to do defensively with this Miami Heat team.
Yeah, and then also when you have Tyler Herro going off for 38 and you have Andrew Wiggins putting up 20, you don't need to be Bam. You could be more Idris on a night like tonight, but they're going to need him to be Bam against the Atlanta Hawks, and I think that he will be that when they face off against the Hawks on Friday night. So a lot of things to look forward to in that game, but getting back to the Bulls on the By the Horns podcast, again, it was a great ride for this team. We've had some highs. We had some challenges with the season. And Drew and I, along with our guy, CHSN Bulls insider Casey Johnson, will have a season in review pod coming your way. But Drew and I are dropping this instant reaction pod from the United Center because the Bulls finished up their game against the Miami Heat maybe a couple of hours ago. So Drew and I are still here putting this work together for the people so you can have this and digest this and send your questions in, whether adding us on social media or putting in the comments on the CHSN YouTube page where you're watching right now. So we appreciate everybody for that. Of course, everybody listening to wherever and however you get your pods and rocking with us throughout this season. So I'm going to save the thank yous and goodbyes for now because we still have to do that with our season in review when we bring in our guy Casey Johnson to make it a big three to finish things off. But the Bulls season ends tonight against the Miami Heat in the play-in. They lose this game 109-90. And now the offseason has officially started for this Bulls team. So for my man, Drew Stevens of the Bigs, I'm Cam Smith. This is the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. But we appreciate everybody. Thank you. We got another pod coming your way and some special things coming during this off season for the Chicago Bulls. Thank you for tapping in. We will talk to you and see you very soon.